I don't want to take up too much of your time or anybody else's. What I'm gonna do is when we do this, I'll save it and then I'll repost it or whatever, so that I just feel like it should be up there for posterity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you go ahead and hit me with the questions, and let's make the best use of our time, man.
All right, cool. That's the bet. So when you first sent me your most recent album, Alters, like I told you, I didn't want to just listen to it and tell you, oh yeah, it was good, but really listen to it. And the first thing I thought about is when I'm listening to your work and anybody else's work, really more so, how do you choose the instrumental? So listening to Blackjack Jonathan Majors and listening to it off acapella with you just saying it versus hearing the beat or the instrumental that you put behind it. What makes you choose the kind of instrumentals, and which poems get instrumentals? Like how do you process that?
So the way that it has worked from the beginning, so I started making spoken word CDs back in '98. Wickedest Man in Babylon was the first one. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to model that one after like hip hop CDs at the time. So it was like an intro, an outro, it was all these little interludes. Yeah. And almost every CD since then has been like that: intro, outro, interlude. I thought that the main difference with a spoken word CD or album would have to be that you got to have the poems, and it's got to be live poems. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people who have made albums since '98, since that point, they put they do a cappella poems, but they're not live for most of them. Mm-hmm. Most people don't like do it in front of a crowd, and I think that's what you need. That's that energy that people have to hear in their car or at home to really get the feeling for what was going on when you were saying it. So up until this CD, when I chose the live pieces, which I always did in front of a crowd, it would be a cappella. CD and the CD before this, I started feeling like that wasn't enough anymore. Like the attention span of people is a lot shorter than it was in '98, '99, 2000, so on and so forth. Like now there has to be something behind it. And the Blackjack Jonathan Majors, now all the poems on the CD were written in my head, right? So there was no pen and paper involved in putting together this CD. So when I wrote Blackjack Jonathan Majors, I had no idea how long it was. I thought I had written in 3 or 4 minutes. It was 7.5 minutes. Yeah. So it was like, the two problems was I didn't want it to be a cappella because I know people's attention span wasn't going to work for an a cappella poem in this day and age like that. And number two, because it was so long, it couldn't be a beat, because any produced beat for 7.5 minutes is going to be hella repetitive at some point. Yeah, it's got a loop, you know, so it had to be a jazz band. And a cat that I knew who worked on the last album named Basio in LA has a jazz band, and he had me listening to some of the stuff they have been working on. And I was just listening to it, you know, and then at some point I was like, yo, maybe I should go back to that stuff and see what works. And that'll keep people's attention for these live poems, you know, since it's a different day and time. And then the other poems that I would normally just put studio beats to, I put studio beats to.
That's interesting.
And I made them all. You know, I produced all of them this time so that they would all be organically me. You know what I mean? Like I went to sample libraries, I bought music, but I put pieces and pieces together so it would be me.
When you are listening to music or anybody else's like spoken word, are you finding your attention span changing as well because of like the times? Or do you feel like just when you think of your music or your spoken word specifically, like, do you see more feedback when you got instrumentals behind it?
No, you know, instrumentals are tricky because, like I said, in this particular CD, all that music is what I like, is what moves me. So you could take somebody away from the poem, like they might like that poem, but they don't really gel or vibe with the type of music. Like I'm thinking like juke joint, it's dark, it's like in the South sometime, and they got a bass player and a drum player, and you know, these mothers got moonshine. I mean, that's how I see music in my head, you know. So it's always dark and grimy in my mind, but some people want like something, you know, like brighter, you know, stuff. Nor was I thinking about like what people are going for in like the modern day and age. I was going for what I like from the beginning to the end. listening to what's hot right now, because I could have done that. I could have replicated some of the stuff that's hot right now, or even bought from libraries that use those type of elements. But I wanted it to be, how I am. Now, my attention span from the time I was a little kid getting kicked out of kindergarten has always been about this big, So it's nothing new. And it's just that spoken word captivates me when it's done right. When it's done wrong, nothing could be more boring. I used to sit in the front row of the New Eurekan in the 90s and go to sleep. You know what I mean? Like, if the poet wasn't kicking it. And it's like one of those things, if I could be dead tired, and if your poem is high, I will wake up.
Yeah.
So attention span wise, it really depends, It really depends on how dope the poet is. But for this particular, yeah. Now that you mention it, with the last CD, I caught myself eventually skipping the poems that didn't have music. So in the beginning, I would play the last album, Thug Healer 2, straight through. And Thug Healer 1 is almost all a cappella. I don't even really listen to it anymore. And then Thug Healer 2, when I listen to it, it's really just the ones with the music that I listen to. I skip over the a cappella. But then you have to give me a pass because I know the poems, right? I wrote them. Right. So it's going to be a little harder for me to keep listening over and over to them when they're already in my head.
That's interesting because for me, I stick to the more a cappella poems first before I listen to the ones with the beats behind them. And I think that's just kind of like a preference thing maybe, but I guess it's the words. Like I've always been like attracted to words. And so even when I was younger and listening to rap music and all of that, it was the beat didn't do it for me. I could listen to like Lil Wayne. He got like a whole bunch of videos of him doing a cappella freestyles and stuff like that. And so it was the way he was able to play with words. And so being able to listen to the live. And then it's also, I think, for me, when you hear somebody else get geeked about a certain line, it's like, yeah, that was a good line.
Well, we talk about Lil Wayne. The man said, real G's moving in silence like lasagna. And that line is one, I can go back to like the simplest rhyme sometimes, like when Styles P said, Styles P, your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. And everybody has said that since then. But could you imagine 20 years ago when he said it, nobody had said nothing like that. Or Rakim saying something as simple as, this is what we all sit down to write. But in my mind, I'm like, damn, so like when Shakespeare sat down, this is what he was trying to do. This is what we all sit down to write, but I'm doing it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So even deeper than I start to think and then I sink into the paper like I was ink when I'm writing. I'm trapped in between the lines. I escape when I finish the rhyme. Like everybody's like, oh, that's slick. But the simpler things for me sometimes that make me really think, like your favorite rap, like, all right, well, I didn't think you was my favorite rapper, but so-and-so's my favorite rapper, but you're his. You know what I mean? Right. Like maybe I need to elevate my criticism game,
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, I guess for me growing up, I always was listening to rap and even now I still use rap as like a influence for how I write, or ultimately the wordplay. I'm paying attention to how, for instance, right now, J. Cole, one of my favorite artists. And so being able to pay attention to what he does, and it's like, okay, cool. And of course, not mimic it or nothing like that, but to be able to modify and reshape and still tell my own stories. And so that also, this conversation we was talking about, listening to some of your older work. So listening to your album you dropped in 2019. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of it. What was the name of it again?
The first one is Wickedest Man in Babylon. That was you said 1999.
No.
That was made in 98 and 19. I don't know, man. But this is 2025. The one before this in 2024 was Thug Healer 2. 2023 was Thug Healer 1. I mean, I don't know, man. 2019 would have been Premeditated Karma.
Premeditated Karma. There you go. So,
surprised at that. And that one is like Thug Healer one as well. It's a lot of, what it is that I was creating beats back when I was a kid. You know what I mean? So I was putting out albums on vinyl when I was like 18 years old. you know?
Mm.
And I had, samplers and sequencers and all that. So I was really into it. So by the time we were making that spoken word CD, and the first one in 98, and I made CDs for a lot of people in New York and New Jersey at that time, I was still really into making beats, and that carried. And at some point when I stopped, I really wasn't into making beats no more. So for like 5 years, I just wasn't into it, the last 5 years or so. So that's why those last 3 albums, it wasn't a lot of beats because I wasn't really making them. And now I'm just getting back into like, yeah, let me get back to what I was doing when I was 18, when I was 19, when I was 25, you know what I mean? And I enjoy it because I feel like it's part of the expression. I'm going to tell you one quick thing, and then we're going to get back to another question I have for you really quickly. I think J. Cole is one of the sickest lyricists that ever lived, first of all, like, no question. His last album, I listened to it straight through. I don't know if I really rock with that last album, but his lyrics, even on that last album, are incredible. And I just think it's crazy that Rhapsody would not have been the nominated, with all the other best rap albums, because in listening to rap albums last year, like I listened to almost every spoken word album that had been submitted to, but I knew about it. So I was studying. I study all the time. I study, every morning, throughout the day, I'm studying music, studying stuff. So anyway, the question I have for you. So J. Cole is irreproachable as a lyricist. Rhapsody is incredible too. Back in My Bag is nuts. But did you feel like Black Jack Jonathan Majors took you out of the element of the live piece? Because you heard it live. You were there. We recorded it at your venue.
Yeah. I think that listening to it on the album, it honestly, I enjoyed it most, like just being able to listen to it over and over again, because you get very intricate in what you're saying to the point where you gotta run it back, like to be able to understand the different layers that you might be talking about within a specific context of when you talk about the one part where he walk up to the guy and he like, like you her? Oh, okay,
That's true.
cool. I'm glad you're not.
When I was a teenager, Dr. Clark was in our periphery, right? Like, so I've had dinner with him. I've been to his house. So Dr. John Henry Clark is, a famous Black scholar. So, that was a true story that he said over dinner one day, that the way that he met Malcolm X was he was at a conference and a friend of his had a white girlfriend, and the friend went to the bathroom or whatever, and he was just standing there working the table. And Malcolm, for his first time meeting him, he came over, was like, yo, how you doing? Like, and then, the woman wasn't really paying attention. So he was kind of whispering like, yo, you with her? Because they had like a Black convention. And they got like a whole thing, they doing a whole presentation about Africa. And he was like, nah, that's my partner's girl. He was like, oh, all right. And he's like, I've been down that road. It was a dead end. So that was actually something that Malcolm X said to him, according to Dr. Clark.
Yeah, and I think that's the cool thing about listening, being able to listen to those tidbits, and you get something new every time. And I think that's the cool thing about spoken word albums, because it's I can't see you every day. Like you're not just popping up at Poetry Unplugged every Thursday.
I'm not popping up nowhere.
Exactly.
Matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you something, and it's something I'm reluctant to say, but so there's a cat in Atlanta named Jamel. There's you in Cleveland, and then there's Tracy Stanton in St. Louis, and then there's my boy Kyrie in Sacramento. Like, if any of the and Eat a Poet MC in Philly, like there's certain people that I don't know what it is about you, but you draw a certain energy that's really familiar. So when I walk in your venue and I'm looking at the people and I'm feeling it, they feel real familiar. And then Tracy Stanton, the people that she draws, the people that Jamelo draws in Atlanta, the people that my boy Kyrie in Sacramento, and there are more. And I could go on, but I'm saying it's something about that energy. And now I'm at a point where if I don't feel like I'm guaranteed or close to guaranteed to getting that energy, I don't even want to do it. So most of the time, somebody asked me to do a show, I'd say the last 9 or 10 times, I've just been like, nah, because I'd rather just stay home. I don't know what it is. It's something about you and those people and some other people. You have a certain magnetism that draws a level of crowd energy that, man, like I used to feel back when Just Words was around in Philadelphia, that I used to feel when Legacy Cafe was in St. Louis, it's crazy. My boy Will was alive, when he had venues in Miami, like, and I could go on. in New Orleans, it was so many venues where I would go there and you wouldn't even want to leave. You feel like you're bringing something out of people that they didn't know was inside them. Like their ancestors are there listening to it with them, and now their ancestors are responding to stuff you're saying, and they don't even know. Like, I'm like, how are these people clapping for this? How do they even know about this? But maybe it's not them. Maybe there's something inside of them that knows about it. So
that's the
short story long. You won't catch me almost these days. You won't catch me almost nowhere. My general answer to do a show right now is pretty much no. Even to like go live or to do a podcast or an interview is no. It's you, right? It's your energy. I was excited to talk to you.
I was geeked. I was telling my girl Precious, I'm like, yeah, I get to talk to Taalam today. I'm excited. But no, that's an honor, though. I appreciate that.
It's mutual. It's a mutual feeling.
Honor. And I was telling, well, not I was telling, but you bring up a really good point of being in certain spaces, and it's like being in a space where you can pull something out of somebody or witness it being pulled out of somebody to where they feeling things that they didn't even know was there.
Yeah, something's going on.
And being in a space where I'm being pulled, I'm like, bro, I ain't even know this was inside of me to think this way or to be opened up. And you talk about like that difference from back in the day to now. Do you think that, like, what do you think has changed inside of like the poetry
in terms of your venue and your crowd, nothing has changed. I mean, that was the first time I've been to your venue and your crowd. But I mean, in terms of the energy of, say, the first time I came to Ohio, with the group of sisters that brought me to Ohio to now. I mean, it's the same type of energy. You know what I mean? But everybody doesn't have it right now. And you have it. It's a certain something magnetic. You're drawing a certain type of people, like with Tracy Stanton in St. Louis. I wonder if she knows the type of magic it must take to draw the people that are attracted to her stuff. You know what I mean? And if you were to, I don't know if you know her or know her story, but it's a very deep, heavy story, and I'll leave it for her to tell it. But that story, I'm sure, has a lot to do with what she has magnetized towards herself. And then you show up. And it's like the old days for me, right? As at this age and this time, most of the people who used to come out back then, a lot of them, it's funny because I was watching an interview with Boosie years ago where he was talking about Nas, and he said half of Nas fans are dead. And I was like, damn. And you like, damn, that's messed up. And then I started thinking like, yo, I think a lot of the people who used to come out to see me, ain't around no more.
That's real.
I mean, when I was your age, like the last poets was my age, and I remember thinking like, I thought of them as really older gentlemen. Now they're still alive. They just rocked a set in DC like yesterday or the day before. You know what I mean? For Malcolm X's 100th anniversary. Yeah. They're still alive, still kicking it. But at the time when I was your age and they were my age, I looked at them. I was thinking, that they were really old cats. And here it is, 25 some years later, they still doing their thing. And I grew up at 4 years old. Checking them out. Yeah. So yeah, man. Yeah. It has changed in the majority of venues. 90% of the time, it's probably not worth it for me to go out. I performed a lot when I was younger because I was living off of the money, and there was money when we were selling products. Like people, it got to a point where people have been, for lack of a better word, became accustomed to purchasing CDs to express their support. And you could not even be featured. You could be on the open mic and sell 15, 20 CDs. You could be featured, sell 40, 50 CDs at $10, $15 a pop. You could live off of it in a different way than you can, now. Now it's a little bit more in the vapor, more digital, more social media. But then it was live and direct. If you showed up, open mic or featured, with your backpack or your bag and your product, you could sell stuff. And I performed a lot because I was living off of it. I needed to sell the stuff. Yeah. Today is different, right? There's not much involved other than, what you agree to do it for. Yeah. And it really is not worth it for the most part for me unless the energy is, like the energy of your people, of your crowd. That type of energy it supersedes any money. Yeah. People will say money, and I'm okay. That ain't gonna do it. I don't want to be unhappy for money.
That's real. It's definitely real. And I feel like for me, I also have gotten to a point where I really had to calibrate and calculate what spaces am I willing to be in. And it ultimately does get to a point where you're like, no, I don't think it's going to be worth it. It's not going to be worth my time, worth the time it takes to travel there, to be in that space, to be around people who really, I think I also had to think about the commercial aspect of things. And I think that's one thing that has shifted a lot. At least even for me, I've been performing only since 2016, and so seeing that shift occur from poetry being heartfelt, for it to be like very intimate, to being this commercialized concept, sometimes I think that can distract from, and like you said, the money, or like the,
I don't know. No, I
say it
thought
one
you
time.
were fading out. It
Oh,
seemed like you got choppy.
okay, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. But yeah, I was just explaining like that commercialization of poetry sometimes, and that can disrupt the ability for crowds to come and really be immersed in the poetry and immersed in the artist, versus being immersed in the name or the title of an artist. I think it do work both ways. Like, you gonna have your people who are those poetry superstars, or superstars in any way, shape, or form, but I think, again, that commercialization of things take away from the intimacy. It also takes away from the authenticity of the people who are coming, and why they coming, why people are deciding to come. So that makes a difference to me, at least,
It, it,
being
mean-
able to see that.
it means a lot to me. Um, I I want to give back. I sometimes feel selfish that I do not agree to most shows, but it's very uncomfortable. And I don't know if people really think about it. Like, with all due respect to that, the average promoter, I don't know if they think about, like, all right, I'm married, right? I love my wife. You know what I mean? I want to hang out with her and watch shows and eat food and shit. Like, you're taking me away from that. You know what I mean? And when I do a show, there's some anxiety. Like, I gotta wake up usually 4 in the morning to catch a flight, to go somewhere, and then be missing my house, my wife, my living situation, and all my stuff is here.
Yeah.
Everything that I like to eat, everything I like to snack on, is all here.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I got to leave all that to do this show, and there is no money really that could kind of. You talked about spoken word superstars. Like, who's a spoken word superstar? Like, name one. Like, the average, like, superstar, for every one fan that even I may have, or one person that likes my stuff, a superstar got like another 10,000 people for every one
Yeah.
that likes
Yeah.
my stuff. So who's the superstar?
Mm.
You know what I mean? You really can't compare. It's really it's still grassroots. It's
Yeah.
probably, from what I could tell, gonna be grassroots for a while.
Yeah.
And being that it's such, there's not that much compensation involved.
Yeah.
And that being the case, it's got to be spirit. It's got to be energy. I got to be going somewhere where I just want to see that crowd. I want to share this feeling, this vibe.
Yeah.
The money's conversation. A lot of times people have asked me to do shows. We never even got to talking about money, because that's that's so far in the back of the conversation right now. Because I know no matter what it is, it ain't changing my life. So what else are
That's
we
real.
talking about? Like, how, what's your crowd like? Who else have you featured? What's the energy like?
Yeah.
That
No, that's real.
that's what it is.
That's definitely real. And you make a good point. It's definitely about the energy that come around from the people, and the vibe that people get off, because I've definitely had spaces in time where my spirit just didn't feel well speaking to a person. And it's like, you know what? It's cool. I don't need to be there. It's not even that deep for me, for real.
Yeah.
But I want to double back a little bit, because we was just talking about rap, and in Premeditated Karma, you was talking a little bit, and also you talk about it in Thug Healer 1 too. You talk a lot, or not a lot, but you've spoken of like people in rap, and like ultimately I really loved what's the name of it? Willie Lynch LLC. So being able to talk about, again, we was breezing over like the term superstar and rappers who have this name but they making deals on the side, or people who are really implants inside of our culture and taking that culture to ultimately bastardize it and make it something that it's not. And specifically, I think maybe it was California Suite I was listening to. But you was talking about how it's missing my memory right now, but ultimately you was talking about
I know
how
which one you're talking about too. Yeah, I was being interviewed, right?
yeah
It was like a
yeah
radio interview, and I was telling him that that rappers was kind of a lot of rappers was selling out. I'm gonna tell you something though, and in full transparency, man, you could rap about drugs and killing people and all that stuff. If you're good at it, I could still appreciate it. You know what I mean? As a lyricist, if you really put that together well, you know what I mean? I could still dig it. But when you're doing it because you think that's what's popular,
yeah
or I feel like you don't even, if when DMX was doing what DMX was doing, I was like, yo, I still get amped off of it because I was walking around Walmart 2 weeks ago playing nothing but DMX, you know what I mean, in my ear. You know what I mean? Just going crazy. But if you're really about that life, if that's how you really live and you writing it well, I dig it. But you doing it just because you think it's popular, and I could tell, you know what I mean, you would not move me
yeah
if we was face to face. You know what I mean? You ain't that. You not built like that. That's not you. I don't dig it. I am aligned with a lot of people who say that I just miss that there used to be two different lanes. You know what I mean? Like I miss that when when there was a Ice-T and a Schoolie D and a and people were kicking some of the Cool G rap, they was doing more rough stuff. It was still that Tribe Called Quest vibe. It was still that X-Clan. It was still that Public Enemy. It was still when KRS was doing some of his more positive stuff.
yeah
I like the fact that there was two lanes. You know what I mean? The hieroglyphic crew in California. I like that. I ain't never mad about, I have some dark seediness to my own past.
yeah
You know what I mean? I was surprised when you said you liked Moody. Like this, because I figured the way I saw you was like somebody who was like really calm and peaceful. I just felt like you had some crazy people probably around you, like cousins and
yes
brothers, sisters, around you, but that you was like, you was like really peaceful. So it was weird for me to hear you say you like this, you know what I mean? But I said to myself, man, it be those peaceful people that you gotta watch out for. Which is what the
yeah
poem is about, right? Just leave me be. It's
just leave
not
me
what you think.
alone. And
Leave me alone.
that's what made me like it so much, because it's definitely that vibe where it's like I know how bad it could get, so like, we don't even got to go there.
Yeah.
And I think that's most people when they meet me, they be like, "Oh, you so bubbly and cheery," and that's my vibe for the most part. I'm always here for a good vibe, for a good time, and I want to enjoy people. I really do enjoy people, but I also can't forget. Like I grew up in a neighborhood, like bro, you don't smile. Like we not smiling. We not doing none of that. Like
Uh-huh.
sit down, be quiet, don't do nothing, don't touch nothing, and I think that is a large part of something that's ingrained in me, that like yeah, I can be happy cheery, but don't play with me either. And I think that
Yeah,
that's what I really liked
I
about
think
Moody.
all somebody had to do is tell me they understood that, and I'm gonna see them different. All somebody got to do is hear it like this. I almost named the CD like this. I mean, the album like this, because I'm like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Is what I mean? It's like, so when you said you liked it, I was like, all right, it's more to him. It's more to him than meets the eye. Then
Yeah, man, that Alter the Altars was dope, and that also made me think about how do you, when you decide to put together an album, like what makes you decide which poems to pick? Because I was listening to the hidden tracks, and I was like, oh no, I heard this on a different album too. So what makes you decide like which poems go
you
where?
want to hear something really funny? So there was 20 different caveats I wrote about this album.
Mm,
Like these are things that are not gonna happen, right? Like
okay.
I ain't a fan of the word nigga,
Mm,
right? So that was one. That word ain't on that album nowhere.
mm,
You don't find it. Like, and there's 20 other points in that album. You know what I
mm,
mean? So I call up, I wrote these ideas, these 20 ideas specifically to read to O.B. West, right? So it's funny. I'm telling him, I call him, we're talking about it. I'm like, I'm not going to tell nobody else these 20 things. This is just for you. And I'm going to tell you everything that I told myself I wasn't going to do on this album. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to write any poems, because any poem I ever performed on a stage, I wrote in my head. Anything you ever seen me doing live was in my head. I wrote that in my head. Not extemporaneous. Yeah. Like it's not a freestyle, but I mean, I never put it to pen and paper. I wrote it and edited it and put it all together in my head, you know, in memory and all that. So this whole album is like that. I said that with this album, because with some albums, when I'm trying to fill it up and add some time to it, I'll throw a beat in, write something real quick, and then that'll be another track. I was like, no wasted tracks, no tracks written on pen and paper. Everything's got to be from my head. You know what I mean? If it ain't dope enough for me to write it in my head and remember it, it's not dope enough for this album. And those 7 poems are the only 7 poems. So there was no poem that didn't make it on the album. There were beats that I started that I didn't like and didn't put on the album. But there was no poem that didn't make it on the album, because I put a lot into it. I damn near, killed myself thinking. I mean, could you imagine, like, Blackjack Jonathan Majors, that 7.5 minutes of history and information, like, all in my head, like, writing it in my head.
The fact that he had that just in his head, that's wild to me.
And I mean, I was fact checking. I mean, I had my phone. I'm like, yo, when did they put that obelisk in France? Or, how tall is the one in DC? So I was looking at facts and stuff, but the poem itself was all, in my head. And the other thing is, with the last album, I thought this is the 20th album, right? And it's all these albums with all these poems that I thought were dope that people never really heard, right? And it's really backwards, because I'm thinking, like, Insane that I did with O.B. West, like VD Clinic that I had done, and that's 20 years old.
It was crazy.
I was like, nobody's gonna hear it unless I redo it. But I think now that's backwards, because I was way more popular in the 90s than I am now. You know what I mean? And that was one of the things of the 20 that I told Obi was like, on this one, there was going to be nothing old. No, I ain't trying to bring back nothing old. If you want the old stuff, then just go back and get it there. Yeah. Because everything is going to be going forward. It's got to be new and fresh, But it's funny, man. It was 20 different things.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's raw. And I never, I guess, because I'm in the process of, dividing up, how I want my next album to be. And I think about kind of they call them abstract. So having an abstract of, okay, this is overall what I want this whole piece to be about. And so I'm going to pick off of this to decide what I'm going to write about, et cetera, et cetera. But I think listening to even Nas, you brought up Nas, I think about he had this one song where they saying they want the old Nas back, but you gotta listen to the Clue tapes and get a pack of blacks. He basically man, that's old news. Allow me to grow, allow me to develop. And I think even with that, I think that's the beauty of poetry too. And I found myself kind of caught up in this maybe a circular motion of trying to get away from certain topics or certain things that I feel like I didn't want to write about anymore. But it's kind of refreshing when you listen to somebody's discography. He was talking about this right then. He was talking about marriage right then and being a single man right then. But later on, he talked about it again, but it's evolved. And I think that's the cool part about being in a space where you're writing new things or you sharing new things, because you allow other people to see how you evolve too. And I had to sit with that for myself, because it's some stuff that I try to avoid, but it's no, I can still write about this because I'm thinking new thoughts about it. I've experienced new things with it. And so giving myself grace in that way too.
Another one of the 20 things was that everything had to have some sort of strong song structure. That's why you have a lot of stuff in there that has choruses. A couple of pieces have bridges. You know what I mean? I was like, it's got to be song structure. All the music, I wanted to make all of the beats that were produced would be by me. But I still wanted to get back to so with the Blackjack Jonathan Majors, another reason for using the jazz was so that it would be more atmospheric. And I thought that because it was more enveloping it, it was just atmosphere for the poem. But I'm trying to get at, did it take you away from it? Did that music underneath it take you, Calil, away from the Blackjack Jonathan Majors? And you
No.
notice even when I posted it with that music, if you notice.
Yeah, I peeped it. I definitely peeped it. I don't think it took me away from it at all. I can honestly say I don't think the music added to it. Like, I don't think it like changed it to make it more ear catching, but it didn't take away from it at all. I think the same impact that it had when we was listening to it live, and it was dope because everybody, we love hearing new stuff from poets. So being able to hear it,
Yeah,
and
that
it's
was
like,
the
oh,
first
this is,
time too.
yeah,
That
you
was
know
the
what I
first time.
mean? So being able to sit there and listen to it, it was like, oh, this is crazy. And not knowing that you was gonna use it for the album, it was like, oh, it was doper to hear it again. Because granted,
I should
like,
say it was the
I'm not just
first
on
time it's the first time I successfully completed it. So I knew I was coming to feature at your
yeah.
spot. I knew that I was hoping to record that poem at your venue. So what I do, it's like when I lived in Baltimore, I was always at the Five Seasons practicing. It was a venue we had every Wednesday. Now it's another venue that was very near and dear to my heart. You know what I mean? But I would go there every Wednesday. I was in town and practice. So here in Atlanta, there's open mics. And fortunately for me, there's love, like, Papa Duke and some of the other cats. B-Rock sometimes does open mics, my man Milk. And I go there. So I tried that poem once or twice, I think, but never really got through it the right way. I tried it at a spot called The Circle, as a matter of fact, and I got through it, but it was terrible.
Yeah.
But I was trying to practice so that I could have it better for when I got to your spot. So that was the first time I really got through it.
Love.
And it's the same thing with that Joan Capone poem, that other live piece on the album. I practiced it at the Silent Poet, is a poet here in Atlanta, at his open mic. I practiced it at Papa Duke's open mic, and then I did it at Jamel's spot and recorded it. So and any live piece on any album is usually better if it's the first time that I've recorded it, because I don't really know it that well, and it forces me to go slow.
Yeah.
So if you notice, like when I'm performing, sometimes if I know a piece too well, I start doing it too quickly, and then I go back and listen to it like, yo, what was I thinking? Why wasn't I breathing? Why wasn't I slowing down? But if I don't know the piece, it gets real deliberate, and it's far more impactful sometimes that way.
No, I can agree. There's definitely times where, and even Lando, like Orlando, he used to tell me, bro, you gotta slow down, like, cause I know something,
And for y'all
and I'll be
that
so
don't know, we speaking of Orlando, who's in Pittsburgh. He runs the August Wilson. He books entertainment for the August Wilson Cultural Center in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's
And also
my
a
guy,
poet.
man.
He's also a poet.
Excellent.
Yeah, he said you were like his little brother. Yeah.
Yeah, Orlando, man. I actually met Lando back when cause I'm not from Cleveland. I'm from Chicago, lived in Columbus a little bit. And then I ended up in Cleveland after going to school at Kent State. So I've only been in Cleveland about 4 years. It'll be 4 years, actually in about a week. I'll be in Cleveland for 4 years. And so I met Lando back in like early 2022, and I was hitting all the poetry spots. Every open mic, I was thirsty to perform. I've always been in a place where I enjoy the exploration. I enjoy being able to learn from other people to continually grow for real. And so I learned about a spot that was out in close to Wycliffe, and I remember performing in Orlando, like, bro, who is you? I ain't never heard you before. I'm like, yeah, I'm Calil, or just cuz. I'm from Chicago, whatever, explaining all of that. And he like, oh yeah, like you got to stay close. So it's been cool to be able to latch on to different individuals who I admire and look up to. And yeah, but Orlando Watson, he good people, man. I remember when he said he was moving to Pittsburgh, so it was cool. It's cool to connect. That's actually how you and I got connected, being out
His
there
venue,
in
right?
Pittsburgh. Yep. Back in
Yeah.
2023. Yep.
It surprises me, man. Like, and I've never seen it as much as I've seen it since I've been in Georgia, where like young poets would be even interested in what I'm doing. And I'll be in a venue, like I'll be in a spoken word venue in Georgia. Like I said, I don't really go out much. If I do go out, it's probably an open mic just to, just to keep my chops up or to tune my ears to what's going on. And a younger poet will step up to me and be like, yo, I went to iTunes and listened to a lot of your catalog and I thought this was dope. And I'm like, I'm thinking that, they're not even thinking about what was going on in 2003 or 99 or whatever. And they're like, it's a different type of environment here in Georgia in terms of, some of the young poets, the Sheep Pharaohs, the B-Rocks and all of them, man. Cat Rewind, just real gracious cats, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for us is really admiring. Even you kind of spoke about it in Permission to Speak, like being able to understand that there is elders before us. And I think when you really enjoy art form, when you enjoy what you're doing, even when I look at it from the perspective of me being an educator, like I gotta go to the older educators to say, bro, I know you experienced something like this before. I need help. And I can say that even there's definitely been times where I might have been prideful, where it's like, no, I'm not studying, I'm not gonna ask for help. But I think that the more you mature or grow and the more you love something, you're willing to like let your ego go to a certain extent and say, nah, this is somebody who has done this and has done it very well. And then to listen to especially things that you can relate to. And it's that connection, because poetry ultimately is a connection. So when I can say something and somebody connect to me and say, oh, cuz like I really needed to hear that, or I really needed to understand that piece in part, or people can ask me questions, it ultimately leads me to a place where why can't I ask questions, or why can't I, like learn
That's
from
what I was
somebody else.
telling you too earlier. Like, ask me anything you want, any sincere question you have, and to me that's redundant because we're talking because I dig your energy. I know any question you're going to ask me is sincere. That's the redundancy. And then writing Permission to Speak, which is that hardcover book, with, where I went around and talked to the last poets and Camille Yarborough and S. Pearl Sharp and Kalama Yasalam and Kamal Dawood and Father Amdi from the Watts Prophets. One heavy thing that I learned from putting that book together was so many things that I thought should be done had already been done. You know what I mean? I didn't realize how many things I thought should happen that S. Pearl Sharp had already done, or that I don't know. If you get a chance, listen to Camille Yarborough's album. You know what I mean? It's amazing. I never stop. I think about it. It goes to my mind from time to time. I can't believe that 20 years ago, well, not 20 years, 40 years ago, somebody did this. 40, 50 years ago, she made that album.
The Iron Pot Cooker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure I listen to it. But you were saying, like, you couldn't believe, like, 40 years ago, somebody was...
50 years ago, I just could not believe that the stuff that I thought we need to be doing had already been done. And it's always this question for me, had always been like, how do you bring poetry, how do you bring it more to the forefront? You know what I mean? And sometimes I wonder if that's even the right question. Perhaps the proper framework of a question is, how do you make the people who love it even more? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think even when I think of that question, it reminds me again back to connection or relatability, because even I can say I was having a conversation a while ago, like a couple of years ago, with somebody about the kind of poems that I might be into, or the kind of poems that I'll like purposely write, or certain places that I won't go because I'm trying to protect what it looked like for me, or what my quote unquote image might look like for certain spaces, because I work with young people. So it's certain things, it's like, no, I'm not. I would, but I'm not gonna go into that realm for real. And so that's something that I'm mindful of. But again, it's a market for certain things, and so, or it's a certain audience for everything. So, like, how
You
do
could
you
get
make
close.
somebody
You could write it though. You could get closer to it without getting there.
without
First of
getting
all,
there?
you can get closer to it without getting there. And there's all kinds of artistic tools that you could use, like parody. You know what I mean? You could write it from from another person's standpoint. You can write it as a conversation with you, where you're just like the straightforward person that everybody thinks sees you as. And then it could be darker elements of yourself, but that could be a different person that you're having a conversation with. You know what I mean? I mean, there are ways of approaching it, because all this stuff, in my opinion, everything has to be fleshed out. I mean, this world is real serious, man. It's some real serious stuff going on. I wake up every morning, read the news. I can't believe it. I can't believe this stuff is being allowed to happen. And because that's the situation, I don't think this is a good time for anybody to be holding anything back.
That's real. That's real. Thank you for that. And thank you for that perspective, because I didn't think about parody. I didn't think about it from those different framings. So being able to frame it in a different pattern, for real. That's real. Thank you for that.
No problem, man.
But yeah.
How long have we been talking? Because I don't want to keep this whole thing going for too long.
Yeah, it is a minute. We've been talking for about 45 minutes. So we can
talk some more. Yeah, we can. But I guess when we get to closer to another 10, 15 minutes, we should probably wind it down.
Yeah, that's
wind
cool.
it down or something.
Around like 110, 115.
We'll just put it. I'm gonna put it on the page, and whoever watches it. Whoever don't. I mean,
I'm down for it.
It'll find who it's meant to find.
Absolutely. But yeah, I feel like being able to get people to love it more is being able to allow them to connect to it, or like show them people and writers who's already writing something similar to what they crave. And then that is like, oh, I want to do that more. I want to, it's kind of feeding. It feeds itself ultimately.
Yeah, my father been sending me these poems. This cat, Ted Jones, who was writing like 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago. Man, it's I hope, I want people to read that book, that Permission to Speak, because there's so much in it in terms of, because like Kamal Dawood was talking about poets back in the days, and Kalama Yasalam mentioned some of the same poets. And then I went back and found those people on YouTube and went to Wikipedia and Googled them, and I learned so much about so many different people, you know what I mean? And again, I learned that a lot of what I thought should happen had already happened. And the benefit of that is now, if you're going to do it, you have a framework to make it even better. Because if I was to do it without knowing it had been done, I probably would have done something close to what they did. But now that they've done it, I can look at what they did and see what could be tweaked and changed and do it differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like having those reference points. And one of my questions was about like, really, how do you research? And even I thought about that because I was thinking about Permission to Speak, and kind of like that face-to-face interaction, of course, asking questions to specific people. And even in Permission to Speak, I think the largest thing that I got from it was that connectivity from everybody. Like there's always been a web in the world of writing, in the world of poetry. There's always been people connected to each other, even if we don't know it. Even if I didn't know how you knew Lando, but now you and I know each other, and like how that works over time, there's always a interconnection. And I think that's what I love the most about being encompassed in the art form. But when I think about research, it is being able to go back into history and ask questions and be able to recognize like, oh no, this has been done before, but how can I reimagine this? Because even even something as simple as like putting images to poetry, when I first decided to think about doing that back in, I want to say 2018, 2019, I thought it was like the biggest idea in the world. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna put some images next to some words, I'm gonna paint, and it's gonna be, ain't nobody ever did this before. But then I learned about euphrasticity, and I learned about all these different like paintings that were
there used to be a movement. There was a movement back in like the 1700s, I think it was. It was called the aestheticism movement that happened in Europe. And the whole movement was about poets and painters. And the painters would paint pictures based on poems that they liked, and the poets would write poems based on paintings they liked. It was called the aestheticism movement. It's a whole artistic movement in the 1800s. Yeah.
And I thought I was a genius at
You
21.
are. I mean, that doesn't, two things could be true at the
Two
same
things
time.
could be true for
Yeah, yeah.
sure.
Two things could be true.
So yeah, and it's cool though to then again grow and learn from all these other people, and CR Freeman, she like one of my mentors at this point, and it's like her being able to train me and say, no, you could also add this. What about adding this at the end, or shaping this around this play? Like pay attention to for colored girls, like go watch that and then shape this around that. So being able to speak to poets who have been here before me and have tried their hand at so many different things and having so many different mediums to work in and work inside of, to be able to say, nah, here's what's been done, and here's how you can grow, Calil. And I think that's been dope. And yeah, I think that's been really fun for me to experience. And one thing I wanted to ask you about was like, again, your experience overall. So using poetry kind of as like, I always look at, for me, poetry is like this road. So if I started out doing poetry, but doing poetry led me to pick up a camera because I realized I needed videos done for myself. It ended up me taking videos for other people, but
Right.
that was another role. It branched off to something else, and me taking videos of myself and then eventually taking videos of other people. I'm like, well, I might as well snap some pictures too. So now thinking about documentary and being able to blend those things together to tell my story and the story of other people, and then going into teaching and being an educator for certain things, and then like paying attention to my own role through poetry. I wanted to ask you, how did poetry play a role in your life? How did that change you over time, since it's such a big part of your life for real?
My story is probably different. Well, it's going to be different than most people because poetry has always been with me. My parents were part of Amiri Baraka's, Leroy Jones'
Yeah.
organization when I was born. So it was always poetry going on around me. When I learned to read, the books in the house were Langston Hughes, Dudley Randall, County Cullen, you know what I mean? Claude McKay, that's what I picked up, So it's always been with me. Now, spoken word is helpful because, like Blackjack Jonathan Majors, that poem, and Jerome Capone, and any poem that I've ever written like that, BD Clinic, for instance.
Yeah.
There was no outlet really for me to share that. I mean, if I'm hanging with my people, and we just, we looking at women, we sitting on some bench drinking 40s or something, we fighting, we doing whatever. They don't want to hear about what happened in ancient Mali.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I knew it, right? I knew about Mansa Musa when I was 9, 8 years old. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But we looking at girls, and we're in the park, looking, trying to mess with some other crew, they don't want to hear about, what I know about Hatshepsut or, Steve Biko or what happened to Patrice Lumumba in the Congo. They don't want. So when I got into spoken word as a community in the 90s, right? Now I'm back to, or now I'm actually really beginning to get to a community of people that I could tell anything. And that was the thing about Legacy Cafe in St. Louis to me, is like that feeling of, you could say all that stuff that you've been holding back, that you couldn't tell your boys.
Yeah.
You couldn't go on a date with a woman and you trying to make her, you trying to be romantic and be like, yo, did I ever tell you about, the transatlantic slave trade and the fact that Abu Bakr had actually been, he had actually left West Africa and been to the Americas before. That wasn't really, nobody was really getting hot to that.
Yeah.
So spoken word though, in that community of people, it made it so that I could talk about those aspects of myself. You know what I mean? So and even to this day, I mean, I'm still listening to hip. I was listening to hip hop albums yesterday, just checking some stuff out. You know what I mean? I'm still on that side of things, but spoken word opened up the community, opened me up to a community that could ingest whatever is on my mind. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think half the stuff that I've said in terms of historical things or some of the thoughts I have about our community, they wouldn't necessarily fly in hip hop. They would have, They would have had a better chance of flying in hip hop in the 90s, you know what I mean? But the way that hip hop has been exploited, and the people that have exploited it, and the people who have allowed it to be exploited for money, which is weird to me, because like, how much money do I need?
Yeah.
You know, like somebody be like, yo, you know, if you do this, they'll pay you X amount of money. You're like, but I don't need X amount of money. And they'd be like, but that's X more than you have right now, but I got enough now. It's like, what difference does it make? And I'm happy. You know what I mean? And that's the killer. I'm cool. I like being by myself. I'm misanthropic. I have a hard time relating to people and talking to people in the first place. You know? That's why I'm so excited to be doing this with you. I know we're wrapping it up, but because it's so hard for me to talk to people. And even though, you know, I'm married, you know, like I said, I adore my wife, but you know, she works, she wants to do the 9-to-5 thing, so she does that. Generally, I'm home by myself. So I'd say a large majority of my time it's just me. I'm not talking to nobody. There's no conversation, no interaction with adults, children, or otherwise. You know what I mean? So when I do meet people that I can interact with, it excites me, which is why I was excited to do this with you. And spoken word is like that. I don't feel that way about everybody I met in spoken word, because some people's motives in spoken word are like you said, and it goes back to some of your original questions. Some people are into spoken word, and you know, if the shoe fits, wear it. You know, I ain't talking about anybody in particular, but you know, if you know, I'm gonna throw it out there, and if it feel like you, just hold on to it. There's a lot of people in spoken word that they just couldn't do nothing else. You know what I mean? They couldn't play the guitar, they couldn't sing, they couldn't rap, they just couldn't do nothing else.
I think
but they
Obi
wanted
said
to,
something about
they wanted to be famous, you know what I mean?
Obi said something
and the
about being a
movement, the way
rapper
that they
who
move
couldn't
is
rap.
about trying to be famous. What were you saying?
I said Obi said something about being a rapper who didn't make it in rapping. I think it was Obi who said something like that, where it's like, oh, you
I
a
mean,
poet.
a lot of people I said they used to talk about that back in New York, in Eureka, and back in the night. Like, you know, it's like some people really love this, and they're really trying to push the envelope. They're really trying to push the art form forward. But there are people, you know what I mean. And like I said, there's nobody in particular that I'm thinking of right now. But I know that there is a vibe. It kind of makes it harder for other people too. Is there's this vibe of fame, and like I told you, ain't nobody in spoken word famous. Ain't nobody famous. You know what I mean? I got posts that might have 100,000 views or some shit. You know what I mean? But there are people who have billions of views. So 1 million views, right, is 10 times as much as my biggest, right? Just like 1 million. And then there's spoken word artists who have 1 million. But even if you've got 1 million, there are people who have billions. That means if you've got 1 million, that for every one of those million people that liked your post that made you think you was famous, they got over 1,000. For each one of those people, they got
that's
over
the
1,000.
thing for me, and that was my last question, was like being able to navigate that, because especially when it's that perceived, like the perceived or the perception of, oh, this person doing all of these things and I want to do that, or I wonder what they doing to get that. And it's kind of like it takes, like you said, it takes away from the ability to show up in some spaces, because it's like, nah, bro, I'm enjoying the art. I'm enjoying being able to say words and having a space for other people to say words too. And so being able to, how have you managed that? And that's the last one. We can wrap it up.
All right, that's cool. And that was the point of this album. Did I send you the link for Bandcamp when I made it?
Yeah,
I did.
I think you did. Yeah.
Let me tell you what that was about. I put myself in the mindset of I may never get an external award, you know, for spoken word. You know, no matter what the award may be, I may never see one of those. So that was one of my 20 things that I wrote, was that when I made the album, I was gonna send it out to people I respect, right? And to get their feedback, because that would be my award, right? Because the album was made the last 2 albums, I was trying to like pursue external recognition. And with this one, I was more like, that's why I said that poem, like this, is so important. This one, I was like, this is how I am. I want to find people who like this, you know, and show them. Because I've been listening to, you know, like people from my era. So like the Rakims, the Redman, that new Snoop and Dre that they had put
Yeah.
out, the Pete Rock and Common, you know, and some of the Nas stuff that he put out. And I'm listening to them, and I'm like, yo, this is giving me life, you know what I mean? Like, yo, like Method Man is still crazy, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, yo, he's still, and Black Thought, they got a joint, I don't know if you heard it, it's like this joint with Black Thought and Talib and Posse Loose and all of that. It's crazy. And I'm like, yo, I want to do that. You know, like I want, because when Biggie was alive, right, I used to be like mad depressed in that time frame, you know what I mean? And it would be times I was like, yo, this is my last day on earth. I don't care. I used to be like that. And then I'll be driving on my way to try to figure out something crazy I can do to just I wanted this whole fucking reality to stop. And then I'm driving and some Biggie song would come on I never heard before. And I'm gonna be like, take it to the church, rob the preacher for the offering, lead a fool, coughing up blood in his pockets like rabbit is, covered the wife, Rolex for the kids, tears, Versace. I'm like, yo, what is he talking about? That one said, I've been robbing fools since running them with singing Here We Go, snatching ropes at the Roxy, homeboy. You didn't know my flow. I was like, you can say that? Like, I was like, can you say that? I mean, it didn't even make any sense because I remember when everybody was going to the Roxy, I was 11, so he would have had to be 11 too. So he could not have been robbing people at no Roxy, but just the artistic writing of it, I was like, yo, you know, so I just wanted, so this album wasn't even about external validation in terms of like people who are outside of the spoken word community. It was more for people inside the spoken word community and people who think like I, you know, who feel like I feel, who don't want to be bothered by like suckers thinking they tough and all that stuff, and just have deeper feelings. So that's why I sent out those messages. That was part, like I said, it was one of my 20 things. I was going to send it out to people I respected, whose opinions I wanted about the album, because that would be my award. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't be I wouldn't have to chase, you know, what's outside. Whatever's outside, I'd be grateful. It would be a bonus. It would be, you know, I would appreciate whatever came. But what I needed is for the people inside to see what I was doing and see that I was still trying to push it further.
Yeah, that's right.
Altered Altars, yo. The album Altered Altars. Get it on Bandcamp, you know, or you can stream it. I want you to hear it.
Yeah.
If you stream it, I don't get nothing from it, really. I mean, I think they sent me like, I told you this is the 20th album, and I got like 19 albums that are already streaming, been streaming for years, man. Them mothers probably send me enough to buy a pizza every month. so if you stream it, ain't no real money gonna come for that. But, you know, if you want a Bandcamp, that Taalam Acey /bandcamp.com, you could do that. But it's not, again, and even that's not the money. It's more like, I want people to buy stuff on Bandcamp, and if you ain't got the money, I'll find a way to get you a free download card and you can get it. You know what I mean? But the reason I want people to either ask me for a download card or go to Bandcamp and buy it is because that's the encouragement. Like when I made this album, when this was done, I was like, and still every day now, I'm like, I want to make another one. You know, I want to go to the next one. I got more stuff on my head. But I'm like, yes. But if people ain't like encouraging, it's encouraging for people to be like, yo, let me get that. Even if they like, yo, let me get a free whatever, download whatever from Bandcamp. At least I know you want to hear it. Because I'm gonna keep writing the poems. The poems just come. I can't stop writing them, but I could stop sharing them.
That's a good way to put that. Man, that's real. And I think it's this One Chance song. It's called 3333, and ultimately he talking like he said 3,333. That's how many tickets paid to come and see your boy front and center Minnesota State Fair. The agent's blowing up my brother's phone like it ain't there because the venue hold 14,000, and at this point you should think of pulling out. But like he's saying all of this, but he start the song off like, bro, I remember when I was 15, when I was 16, and I'm at this concert. It's a 21 plus. He said I'm at the concert. It's a 21 plus show, but everybody there like 31 up. So he got X on my hand, Shirley Temple in my hand. Like he underage. He there. He like, it's like, some of my friends ain't show up, but I'm here and I'm ready to share this stuff. He like, it's some of these things I gotta share. And I think that getting to that point, I think I'm happy to hear you at that place, and also being able to place where it's like, bruh, no matter what, I gotta write this. I gotta get this stuff out. I
Yeah.
gotta share it. And it's encouraging, regardless of if it's 14,000 people at this venue or it's 3,000 people. I remember performing in front of 17, and it's okay because I know the impact of just being able to perform in front of one. And I think
Yeah.
that just one person, I got this one poem where I'm like, bruh, if one person walk up to me and say, this book helped me, I did my job. I did my job.
Man,
I did what I was supposed to do for real.
with this album, people are like on like the video that's on Instagram for the altars.
Mm-hmm.
It's people who have just commented. You know, I screenshot those. I thought about printing them out. You know what
No.
I mean? Like people have texted me, or people have emailed me, or made comments, or DM me. Sometimes, so some of them I have actually screenshotted and saved them because it makes me feel good. It could be one person. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, especially if I have context as to who that person is and what, you know, what their what I think their level of critique would be, it makes me feel good. You know what I mean? I'll give you an example. Ngoma is an elder from Harlem, you know what I mean? And well, he lives in Harlem. And he just performed at the last Poets Tool at the Howard University thing that they did a day or two ago. But like he sent me, you know, something saying, yo, that album is hot. Now Ngoma is my elder, right? He got like, he was in the Vietnam War.
Wow.
You know what I mean? He was in a war. I think it was the Vietnam War. It's either Vietnam or Korea, you know? And I'm like, yo, man, he just, for him to hit me back like, yo, that, I screenshotted it. You know, I thought about making a collage of just people saying that the album, the people who thought the album was dope.
That
you
would
know,
be
and like
raw,
I said,
though.
an external reward would be dope.
Yeah.
That would be fresh. But what's necessary for me are those things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually one thing that we did. We had when we did the album release party when me and Morgan released Bear, and I sent it to you, and you saying like, yeah, that was clever. Like it mean a lot when people you respect can say something, and I think that so what we did, we had these like canvases, and while the album was playing, people could walk up and write their thoughts or like whatever they needed to say on the canvas, and they. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, that still hang on my wall. Like, that type of stuff is important to me because these are people I see every day. These are people who decide, like, it's people who still like, yeah, that album, still listen to the album. And
I gotta go back to this live too and watch the comments. Like, you know, I can't really see them. So I could see comments going up the screen the whole time, and I can't really, I would have to take my glasses off, be like, oh, what's up, Beowulf? You know? Yeah, Beowulf is my dude I met in Wisconsin. I think we first met. He lives in California now, San Diego. I'm gonna get out to San Diego eventually, Bear. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. And I know you want to wrap it up though. You want to say something to wrap it up?
But yeah, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate your insight more than anything. Like literally this being birthed from me just asking questions and learning from you for real and learning how you process certain things. And that's been a large part of my recent journey as I've been growing and developing as a man, as a person, as an artist altogether, just being able to ask questions. So I appreciate you for taking some time to just talk with me for real. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, man. Hopefully, maybe sometime in the future we could do it again. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely got
when we both have grown even more. You know, we can come back and revisit it.
That's a bet.
I appreciate it, man. Take care.
For sure. You too.
Peace.
Peace.